So we talk about multi-use trails and the home location of users. Now, why was I interested in that? Well, because we've got a fair amount of tourism in our area between Williamsburg and Virginia Beach. And so people are interested, not only in those two places, but other places. People are interested in bringing money in from the outsides, right? So even if you're just a rural county, you want to bring money in from the outside. And so are your trails, are they bringing money in from the outside? So that's why I was looking at it. And so I used personal travel, of course, and then with the visitor home analysis. So there's the little text printout thing. And so home analysis, unlike what we looked at before, home analysis requires the end of a trip. So whereas before I sort of didn't want, I wanted my ends to be way out here. Now I want to find the end of the trip because that's where StreetLight will record the home location for me. So, I did 4 different trails and I used 3 different methods to find locations where people were still stationary long enough to where the trip ends or starts, and then I can find their home. Is everybody with me on that? Okay. So this first one is called the Virginia Capitol Trail. It goes, and all of you should ride it. It goes from downtown Richmond to Jamestown, and it's 50 miles. It's a great trail. And so what I did, this is right where it starts. There's a big parking lot here, and there's this gazebo right here. So I figured, well, people may stop at the gazebo because you can pump your tires and you can get water and you can just sit down. Okay? Whereas the parking lot serves this big museum, so I can't use the parking lot. Now it occurs to me, could I have used a pass-through?
Not
for the home?
time you ran that.
Okay.
But we're making some updates to this analysis or query type in the platform where you'll soon be able to use pass-through zones. So people passing through this section of the trail, where was their inferred home places?
So I could make the parking lot my end zone, and then could have made this a pass-through zone, I guess.
Yeah, or just make the pass-through zone right there where the gazebo is. So anyone
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I made this as an end zone, for lack of a better word. It's frustrating. Terminology has always frustrated me in my career. So we talk about trip ends, E-N-D-S. Well, but a trip end could be the start of a trip. So that terminology makes me crazy. But anyway, all right. So I drew my zone around the gazebo, and this is what I found. And again, I use Esri. I like dots. So this is the other end of those trips. So, of course, a lot of them are local here, but look, you got people all the way out in LA and down in Florida and in this nice East Coast corridor here. So, again, I love that map. And then the main thing we wanted to know, how many people are coming from out of town. So this is the metro. So this is basically in-town people. And this is out-of-town people. So they're coming from Richmond and D.C. and New York, and then these other areas. Now, speaking of this pie, it gets a little bit tricky because your data doesn't necessarily, your percentages don't necessarily add up to 100%. Okay, because, let's say, well, it doesn't matter whether you're doing states or census tracts or metros or whatever. You're going to have a database with results, and there's a certain threshold, and then you don't get results. And so if you add it all up, you'd like it to add up to 100%, but it doesn't because, let's take census tracts.
Block group
Block group. Let's take block groups. There are probably 1 million block groups in America. I don't know. There's a ton. So a lot of those block groups, you're not going to get any data for. And so because the number is so small, and then you're not adding up to 100%. So you got to be careful about that. I won't bore you with that anymore.
It's an
But
interesting question of, so basically there's sort of this long tail of block groups with very small number of people that showed up at the Capitol Bike Trail, so we end up kind of dropping those out. So when you sum up all of the block groups, it's like 85 or 90%. So
that 10%, the question is, how much of that 10% is in a block group in my area that didn't score, or how much of that 10% is out in Arizona, and so you got to make assumptions. You just got to be careful with that. And usually, like I said, it adds up around 90%. So depends on what you're doing. You just got to be conscious of that. Okay, so this was the second method that I used, and it was just drawing a box around the parking lot. This is out in the country, and so nobody's really using this parking lot other than people using this trail, is my assumption, and I believe that's a good assumption. So we just drew the nice box around the whole parking lot, and then this is what we found. It's down near North Carolina, so you got a lot of people from northeastern North Carolina, and then more emphasis on the local area.
And it's actually called Dismal Swamp?
Yes. So you're obviously not an East Coast person.
I'm from New England.
Okay,
Not
well,
an Atlantic person.
George Washington was a part owner in the Dismal Swamp. So
Yeah,
it's-
second president reference.
it's been around a long time.
Okay.
And so anybody know how many natural lakes there are in Virginia? There are actually 2. One is in the Dismal Swamp, and the other is up in the mountains somewhere. Mountain Lake. Thank you. So anyway, there's your trivia for the day.
Yeah.
Now, this was the third method that I used for the Elizabeth River Trail, which is in Norfolk, and is another great trail that I want you to ride because it goes by all these breweries. You see Smart Mouth here. And so anyway, there was no gazebo that I could use, and there was no parking lot that I could use. So I tried drawing my zone around the whole trail. Can you see that? That's actually a zone, a skinny zone, okay? And I'm just assuming that people are going to stop on the trail somewhere long enough to be recorded by StreetLight. You might say, well, why did you split it here? That's because this is like a wide sidewalk on a street, and I didn't want to pick those people up. So I actually got a result for here and a result for here. Okay? And so this is much more of a local trail, less of a tourist attraction. So those are my results for that. And then how did we use that? Like I said, well, for the Virginia Capitol Trail, and I was just talking to, is it Sean? Yes. About something we're going to do for the Capitol Trail. We're going to, we want to actually estimate the amount of money that's being brought in. So I'm talking to a contractor now to do a survey, and he's trying to figure out how long will it take him to sit out there on the trail and find people, one, that will answer his questions, but 2, that are from out of town, because I'm only interested in the money spent by people from out of town, okay? And so we're using the StreetLight estimate of 50% of people being from out of town. Then he can figure, okay, half of the people are not eligible for my survey. So I've got to double the amount of time I think it's going to take to collect 400 surveys.